When someone has extraordinary success, you have to ask, are they the 1 in 1,000? Because there's a lot of industries built on the 1 in 1,000 where most people suffer. I'm looking for odds where I can win. And in the end, unfortunately for Airbnb to work, you're going to have to get a little savvy or bring in a CPA or accounting if you don't understand expenses and profits. And you got to get realistic numbers. You got to make sure that you're not living off of hopium like, oh yeah, just imagine I ran the numbers if this thing were rented 80% of the time. I'm like, do you have any reason to believe that this would rent 80% of the time out of the high season?
Kris, do your strategies allow for VRBO and Airbnb and, these short-term rental solutions? Do you do any of that?
The number of Airbnbs that I own are 0. And it's not that I wouldn't ever own them. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about what makes a really great Airbnb and what makes a really bad Airbnb. I have had, by the way, I've done some Airbnb. And so I've developed some of my own personal opinions, and I'm friends with some experts in the space. And I think that there's a gap between assumptions people make about, oh, you own a house, this is cool, short-term rental. You could rent it for X hundreds of dollars a night, and that'll be better than just renting it as a rental. And in most cases, that isn't true. So you're gonna have to take your knowledge space to a new depth, and you're gonna have to do a little bit of stress testing before you make a big financial decision and wind up one day, oh, I made a lot of assumptions that got me into this deal, and guess what? This is a sucky Airbnb.
Well, what do you say to the logic that, hey, we can have a summer home in a nice vacation area, and then when we're not Airbnb-ing it, we can go and use it ourselves?
Okay,
is that valid logic?
Okay, so you know what? Let me fix this one right now. Human beings are creatures of habit. So they're like, I live in a house, and we like traveling to this one place, and so now we want to buy a house there, and we need to find a way to justify it. So we're going to Airbnb it. And you know what? That means that we could literally stay there for free, even make money by having the place. There is nothing wrong with that thinking. But I got a question to pose that might alter your mindset overall. What would you rather have? Would you rather own a cabin that makes you $5,000 a month, which means that there's plenty of opportunities for you to use it during the year when it's not being rented and have a cabin? Or would you rather have $5,000 a month of passive income that you could use to travel anywhere you want in the world and rent 1,000, 1,000,000 different cabins? I think a lot of us get really attached to small ideas because we're making incremental steps of growth. For me, I once had this notion of I want a cabin. In fact, I had a beautiful $1 million piece of just in the woods up at Sundance, Robert Redford's resort area, right? I love to go snowboarding up there. And I had this private bridge that would take me over the river to like these beautiful 100-foot tall evergreen trees. I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful lot. And I had visions of Airbnb and corporate offices will want to rent this out. And I got a lot of space for parking. That's unique to whatever. There was this idea where the more you get fixated on the concept of ownership, I think the more you screw yourself over. I don't really want to own anything. I want to control things. So for me, the flaw of, first of all, I want a cabin that I can rent out, is all you're doing is increasing, for the most part, liabilities and financial obligations of things that you need to pay. And so I've made it a purpose in my life to own as few things as possible. If I don't have to own it, I don't want to. But then again, you have to understand I have a really strong preference. I've been to 40 different countries in the world. I love to travel. And for me, I've made a commitment. I find a place that I absolutely love and I'm like, I can't wait to see you again, but I won't until I've seen everything else at least once. And for me, I thrive on variety. I thrive on novelty. And I want to tell you why. Have you ever done the same commute over and over and over again? And you get in your car and you start driving there and all of a sudden 20 minutes goes by and it's almost like autopilot goes off and you look up and you're like, where did the last 20 minutes go? Have you noticed the older you get that time flies? Have you noticed that with each passing year, it's like life is speeding up? It's because in your brain, you're creating pathways. Heuristically, you're creating shortcuts for how you see and do life. And so, for example, when you become so habituated to something, time goes so fast because you get on autopilot and you fall into a routine. Listen, I'm 41 years old and I'm at a point where I want to live the longest life that I possibly can. In fact, my goal is to live 1,000 lifetimes in my earth time that I'm here. How on earth can I do that? Well, it's because I create so much maximum variety in my life. For example, I don't want to work at a company for 40 years. I want to start the company, and in 4 months, I want to hand the company off to someone else. I want to get the benefits of the company. I don't want to benefit people's life. I want to create value. But guess what I'm on to? I'm on to my next race. I'm on to my next chase. I'm doing my next thing. That is what I value, because every time I do something I've never done before, for example, skydiving. First time I went skydiving, ask yourself if you've ever been skydiving. If not, think of bungee jumping, or maybe the scariest thing you've ever done. Maybe that was taking your dog for a walk. Think of something that pushed you outside of your comfort zone. In that moment that I was skydiving, it was interesting. I wasn't thinking about dinner that evening. I was in the moment. I was present. This is the beauty of novel. When something is novel, when something is new, you become present. If you've seen the movie Walter Mitty, The Life of Walter Mitty, it's a great example of a guy who is stuck in this boring, mediocre routine, who has this major breakout. Or if you're a book lover, Donald Miller's A Million Miles in 1,000 Years is a fantastic book. The first 100 pages will drive you nuts, because this guy's living the most boring life until he wakes up and realizes that he can author the most amazing story and started doing the most amazing things with his life. When you do something you've never done before, I know I'm totally taking a tangent from Airbnb, but I'm just telling you that when you allow yourself to do things that you've never done before, even if they're scary, there's a really cool gift. It's not the thing that you're doing. It's that time will move as slow as it possibly can when something is novel. So I'm always exploring new foods, new places, new pathways. When I get out of bed in the morning, sometimes I get out of bed backwards. Sometimes when I put my shoes on, I don't start with my right foot. Sometimes when I go to my closet, I take the thing that I don't want to wear the most and I put it on. I'll force myself literally to just do things different, because in the conscious space of producing an awareness of novelty, time slows down. And personally, I don't want life to get rushed. I want to live as much of it as I possibly can. And many of us are living lives. I find that most people are only present for a very short period of their day. You know what part that is? It's the part that isn't in the routine. So I do everything I can to break routine. And Tony Robbins said something, I was one of Tony's lions. I paid like $350,000. I'm at his house, and he brings in Mike Tyson and Conor McGregor and just these amazing people. And we're having this moment, tons of novelty. And I remember he said this thing I'll never forget. He said, the amount of uncertainty that you can comfortably live with will determine the quality of your life. What does that mean? It means that if you can deprogram certainty, most of us are living for significance, security, and love. We want to know what's going to happen. But therein lies, I think, like the grave robber. You realize it's been said that the richest place on the planet, the graveyard. It's where unsung songs go to die, inventions that never saw the light of day, all the amazing choices people could have made that didn't, they brought them to their grave. I was in Valley of the Dead in Pharaoh's camp, had just seen the Great Pyramids, and in this valley, I went to go see where they had unearthed 100 years earlier King Tut's tomb. The people that uncovered it, when they opened the door, they all died within a very short period of time. They were asphyxiated by the food that the Pharaoh had brought in with him for the afterlife that had now taken thousands of years to mold. And he brought his wives with him, some of them alive, food, riches, all these things for the next life. He's still not there. His food never got eaten. Didn't get to enjoy those women. The gold never got spent or enjoyed. This is the only moment that matters. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make life as present as I possibly can, which means break the pattern, get out of the routine. And by the way, don't just leave your comfort zone. Leap out of your comfort zone. Take the most uncomfortable course of action, because therein you will find what you'll never find inside your comfort zone. More importantly, by taking the risk, everything that you don't have that you're searching for will only ever be found out there, and not by tiptoes. You got to get out there if you want life to happen for you, instead of inside your comfort zone where life happens to you. Airbnb.
So yeah, this approach to Airbnb is maybe people trying to do a comfortable approach to a rental unit.
Well, listen, am I saying that you can't do Airbnb the right way? Here's how Airbnb is done the right way. You go find popular destinations that people like to go to, and you crunch the numbers. Can I acquire a very desirable piece of real estate with comps? I can look at other similar properties and see, oh, these ones are rented out, VRBO, Airbnb, 65% of the time. Here's the high season. Here's the low season. I got their financials. I know how many days it's going to be rented. I know what my expenses are. I know what my profit should be. And now I can roughly approximate how much money that I'll make to see if it's a worthwhile deal or not. Let me tell you the deals in Airbnb that make the most sense. It is the people that had the property in the family decades earlier. It got paid off. Airbnb comes around within a decade, overtakes Marriott, a $27 billion company, becomes a $32 billion company, and yet doesn't own a single piece of real estate because it's about control, not ownership, by the way. This is the new world that we live in. Millennials get this. And, those people that say, wow, I got this beach property, it's worth like $4 million. And all of a sudden on a short-term rental, I can freaking cash cow that. And you got to be leery of something. When someone has extraordinary success, you have to ask, are they the 1 in 1,000? Because there's a lot of industries built on the 1 in 1,000 where most people suffer. I'm looking for odds where I can win. And in the end, unfortunately for Airbnb to work, you're going to have to get a little savvy or bring in a CPA or accounting if you don't understand expenses and profits. And you got to get realistic numbers. You got to make sure that you're not living off of hopium like, oh yeah, just imagine, I ran the numbers if this thing were rented 80% of the time. I'm like, do you have any reason to believe that this would rent 80% of the time out of the high season? So in other words, data. You got to make decisions on data, and then you can make our Airbnb work. And by the way, there are people that know how to hack it. There are people that know how to make a lot of money with it, and it can be a great business model. It's not my preferred for one major reason. I love boring. I love predictable. When I do my 1,000 single family homes that they all smell the same, they all look the same. Airbnb is a game of art. There's math and science behind it, but it's a lot of art. And it usually means a higher dollar figure, which means a higher exposure of risk. It means fewer eggs in that financial basket. A lot of people are dumping into everything they got to make it work. And you better hope you've done your math right, because if you didn't, that's how real estate takes people down.
So I don't know if you realize the irony of what you just said, Kris. After pontificating for probably 10 minutes about novelty, you just told me you like boring.
Yeah, but guess what?
Which is it?
Hello, I outsource all my boring. Hello. By the way, everything in my life that I can outsource, if I can delegate it, I will. I have a truck on the side of my road right now that has been there because the engine's dead, and I could jump it with my own car, but that will take me like 7 minutes. And then I got to drive it to my friend's house where he's going to park my cargo trailer because I don't want to keep it in front of my house. For 2 weeks has gone by, I haven't done it. You know why? It's going to take me 30 minutes. The value of my time for 30 minutes is not about the money, it's about the time. So this morning I'm like, oh heck. So I just called someone up and said, hey, get one of your employees to come by and do this thing for me. It'll probably take them 2 hours to drive there, figure it out, go back. And the only reason why I asked is because I know that they have excess capacity, which means I'm paying them for time that they're not currently utilizing. So you know what? I'm going to ask you to do something really random, and I'm going to save myself $10,000. 30 minutes of my time.
Yeah, and I say ironic, but I know.
By the way, that may have sounded really snooty. Rich people, I just got to say it, are often very misunderstood, but it's because they stop valuing money.
Yep.
And they start valuing time. Those equations are very different. If you value money, you'll say, oh, I could save $70 if we ship this back. And the person says, well, that will take me 20 minutes. And because I understand the value of my time, it'll cost me way more money than to do that. So if you allow the frugalist to reign supreme, you'll never be better than basic well-off. And in retirement, you'll be so far behind where you need to be. Dave Ramsey can only get you so far. And Dave Ramsey is really good at creating poor people that have a few $100,000 at retirement. And that's better off than the average American. That's a great plan for people that are financial idiots. That's a great plan for people that are unwilling to financially educate. That's a great plan for people that are terrified of risk. But if you got this one life to live and you realize modern medicine is going to keep you around a whole lot longer than you currently think the game is, if you got another 20, 30, 40, 50 years in you, add 30 years. You might have that. And if you're really not prepared for that, you're going to have to think differently. How did I get there? Did we just tangent again?
A little bit. But no, Kris, when it
Have
comes
it on podcast where we skip all over the place and we'll take you in places we don't even know where we're going.
It's amazing. But now, in terms of your investment strategy is very conservative. You are a very liberal person in terms of experiences and travel and wanting novelty, but when it comes to investing,
well, it's kind of a weird
cutter.
thing. In my business, you better think that every penny is accounted for. I want the margin to be as high as possible. And I like big margin that allows me to take more risks. I have more room for R&D, but I also have pathways where I can give my people raises and take care of them and do a lot of that kind of good stuff. So you're right. It's a total paradox. Like you look at the spending in my own life and it doesn't look anything like the spending in my business life.
Final take on Airbnb. Hot or not?
I think first of all, no. I mean, Airbnb has gone through so much suffering just because of the pandemic in general. But by the way, riches are niches. So that doesn't mean that you should take this advice and say, well, I'm going to ignore that. If you feel called to that, here's my advice. Go find the person that is an expert in it, AKA that is not me, and then get in their airspace and learn how to do real math. Do not rely on trust. Verify everything. Look at the data. And if you can't pull comps, don't pull the trigger on the deal.